Here's a segment from this month's edition of St. Charles Parish Today, a new monthly local talk show. There's a four-letter word that's been gaining in unpopularity in St. Charles Parish over the last few weeks, and it happens to be spelled FEMA. The federal agency has been the target of much discussion over the last few weeks as homeowners become aware of changes to the National Flood Insurance Program that essentially removes grandfathering of policies and directs rates to hit actuarial highs over a 5-year period. Combine that with the proposed flood insurance rate map that places thousands of homeowners on the West Bank into flood zones for the first time, and there's reason to take notice. This issue takes in many different facets, including flood insurance profitability, congressional actions, mapping science, flood protection, and more. Here with us to talk about the issue locally and what actions the parish is taking in response is Parish President V.J. St. Pierre, Coastal Zone Manager Earl Mathern, and Councilwoman Julia Fisher-Perrier. Thank you all for being on the show to talk about this very important topic. I'm going to start, I guess, with rates. A lot has been discussed in the public since the March 25th open house about some outrageous flood insurance rates that were quoted verbally to residents. What do we know or not know about those rates, and how would that information affect the discussion that we're having?
Well, we know that during the open house that was held on the 25th of last month, that our residents were quoted some extremely high rates, especially folks in the By-Gosh, Desalmond and Parity area. Officially from FEMA, they're saying that those rates were should not have been quoted, and that the new rates are scheduled to come out very shortly. In particular, we're waiting for a new set of rates around June the 1st of this year. The point that most residents are making in responding to that is that even if they cut them in half, it's still rates they can't afford. But for official rates, we'll just have to wait till June the 1st and see what they are.
Okay. So a lot of folks that have been following this issue know that it's twofold. You have the proposed maps, and then you have the Biggert Waters Flood Insurance Reform Act of 2012. First, I want to talk about those maps and some of the reasoning that you guys may be aware of why those changes have occurred as far as uncertified levees, base flood elevations, that sort of thing. What can you tell us?
Well, the big difference between the maps we have, the proposed maps, or the preliminary maps, I guess is the official term, and the maps we've had in the past is twofold. Number one, they're considering us a coastal community. So that more than just still water elevations and rainfall, we have a wave component to the models that are determining our base flood elevations. On top of that, the levees that had been shown on the 1983, or some of the levees that had been shown on the 1983 and the 1992 map series, are considered unaccredited now. And the way that works for the modeling is they just basically erase the levee. And those are shown as areas that are just completely exposed to tidal surge.
So, Mr. St. Pierre, from the parish's point of view, what is the parish trying to do to maybe change that?
Well, there's a bunch of things that we're doing right now. Yesterday we had conference calls with all the coastal parish presidents, mayors, CPRA, all our congressional delegation. I think the most discouraging part about all this is that when you talk to our congressional delegation and you get their version of what they think the Bidders Water Act really is, that they all have a different version. So when FEMA came to our town hall meeting, they gave their version of it, and it scared people to death. So, and our congressional people are saying that the people in District 6, the FEMA people in District 6 is making all these comments, and it's alarming the people. Well, the people in District 6 is our representative, so that's the people we have to listen to. But we are going to Washington on May the 6th and 7th. We have 7 parish presidents made commitment, along with GNOIC, and we're going to see all our congressional people, Senate Finance Committee, FEMA, the National Association of Realtors on board, NACO's on board. And we're going to challenge this thing to the end, Renee. It's, I don't think it's a done deal. I think, and you know, we hired Dr. Saheda to come in and to fight this thing. And I feel that's our best shot of getting these rates reduced is through technical data that Dr. Saheda can come up with. He's been successful in other parishes, and I'm sure he's going to be successful in our parish, knowing that some of the obstacles that are in the way of our to protect our area has not been considered. But the thing that amazes me is that we continue to let the federal government, mainly the Corps of Engineers, dictate what's going to happen in our parish. St. Charles Parish is not moving out to the coast. The coast is moving to St. Charles Parish, and they've done nothing to protect us. So I think it's a responsibility of the Corps of Engineers. If they want these rates to be high, they ought to be paying this rate, not the people of St. Charles Parish, because the people that's affected, the Willowdale, the Mimosa Park, the Bayou Gorge, the Desalmon areas, they built to the flood elevation that FEMA told us to do to implement, and we did that. They built their houses to that elevation, and now they come back and say, "Oh no, we reevaluate, and we need to go up a foot higher." So why should they be penalized for that? Because FEMA made a mistake. Same thing in city of New Orleans. The levees don't fail in New Orleans. We're not sitting here and talking about this right now. We're talking about something else. So it's not fair to the people who did what the government told them to do. They followed all the rules and regulations. They invested their money in their houses. And now FEMA's saying, "Hey guys, it's a whole new ball game. We got to start from square one."
Right. And Ms. Perry, I wanted to bring you in too. VJ mentioned places like Mimosa Park and other places in Luling that are affected by this too. We hear a lot about the really high rates in Bayou Gauche, Parity, and Des Allemands, but what have you heard from your constituents on this?
They're concerned, the scare tactic wasn't as bad from FEMA in the town hall, not the town hall, but the open house from FEMA when they rode into town. A lot of folks in Mimosa were not aware that they were going to have base flood elevation changes if we adopt the new maps. They looked at one layer of the map which showed the zone was going to stay the same. Didn't think anything was going to be different. So it is a concern. I know Earl's mentioned seclusion a lot to the people in the parish, and Mimosa is one area that is being considered for that if we have to go that route. But they're concerned, and they should be. And the fear that's out there is with just cause. They've got to continue to send letters and continue to call.
Definitely.
We've got to continue.
Definitely support that.
Yeah.
So the Bigger Waters Act, that changed crucial parts of the National Flood Insurance Program that affects affordability, obviously. So folks in New York and New Jersey that I've seen on social media, they're starting to take notice, they're mobilizing, we're doing the same thing. So can you give a quick overview of some of those changes and what they mean for homeowners?
Sure. The biggest two changes that Bigger Waters creates are the taking the quote subsidized rates from pre-firm houses. Pre-firm houses in our parish would be houses built before May the 2nd, 1983. Pre-firm is a term that just means built before the regulations were in place, before the flood insurance rate map. That's what firm stands for. And the pre-firm houses tend to be a flat rate. In other words, it doesn't really matter where you are in relative to the current base flood elevation. You were built before the regulations were in place. You can't possibly be held responsible to those regulations. So there's always been, since 1968, since the program started, a flat rate for those houses. The other part that's changing is what's called grandfathering. That's a term that gets thrown around a lot in a lot of different venues. But specific to flood insurance, what it meant was if you were in a special flood hazard area, in a flood zone, and the elevation requirement changed, your premiums didn't. It stayed the same. You were grandfathered to that rate. If you were not in a special flood hazard area, but a new map put you in one, your rates did go up, but it didn't go up relative to the elevation. It went up to another flat rate. The flat rate for pre-firm and the flat rate for like a grandfathered X were about the same. They weren't cheap. Okay, they were somewhere in the $1,300 to $1,600 a year range. But with Bigger Waters getting rid of those two terms, saying that, and this is all staged in. Okay, naturally, it's not hitting all at once. But with Bigger Waters saying that those two are responsible, their grandfathering and pre-firm rates are going away. Now those houses will be rated based on the current elevation, regardless of the regulation at the time they were built. So that, with an actuarial, the change to quote actuarial rates in the National Flood Insurance Program make for some pretty high rates. Now, what we understand from FEMA with the rates is that for the folks below base flood elevation, in the past, that's always been sort of a punitive, a punishment, because to wind up below the base flood elevation, you had to have done something wrong. You had to have either gotten a variance or ignored the law, and it was a punishment rate. The problem is that those punishment rates are the only thing that's out there for folks below base flood elevation. So those are the numbers we're hearing when we're talking about folks that are now subject to being rated relative to the base flood elevation. So hopefully the new maps will be something, I mean the new rates will be something other than a punitive rate, but we just don't know that.
Okay. Before we came in this morning to do the interview, we talked a little bit too about the East Bank and the fact that for now the maps are on pause. There's no action being taken to adopt them or not. What could that mean for East Bank residents who know that if the maps are adopted, likely their rates are going to go down? But since no action is being taken, what does that mean for them?
Well, most of the East Bank is rated an A99 district, which an A99 is a holding zone that was put in place while the levee was under construction. If you remember, before the A99, there were some really high flood zones in there, some 8s and 9s, and was making folks build basically up on a hill in the middle of existing neighborhoods. We went to the A99 in 2003 to relieve that. That rate is not cheap either. It's back with that base rate like grandfathered X used to be. So it's $1,300 to $1,600 depending on coverage. And those folks are going to, like everyone else in the country, probably see a small increase. I think I read that A99 was going to go up about 9%. What concerns me on the East Bank is there are some AE flood zones out there that are in effect. Now, in the areas that are AE, or special flood hazard area on the East Bank, all of this discussion about grandfathering and pre-firm applies to those areas. So it's a little harder to tell because it's kind of sprinkled in there, but there are some areas that potentially are going to go up even without a map change. So.
Yeah, I think that's important to kind of point out as well.
Yes.
So at a recent meeting, and I'll forward this to you, the council took a couple of actions, and we discussed a little bit about them already, but I want to reiterate those to fight the changes. Can you talk a little bit about those and maybe what you guys might have on the table coming up?
Sure. We formally requested, along with some others in the parish, a delay. We've approved the ordinance to move forward on asking FEMA to delay these maps. I think at our town hall they made it very clear that they were okay with that before we had to formally ask. But we asked for 90 days. I don't know that it'll be 90 days, but I think we're looking at a whole lot longer than 90 days. But at least we're formal and we're in place, and we know that they're not going to move forward without any word from us. So that's in place now. We put a lot of trust in the hands of Earl here in guiding us through this process. So as things are now, we're on hold. We're on hold for a while until we can sort this out.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, is there anything you would like to add on this subject that maybe we haven't covered?
Well, the only thing I want the people of the parish to know that we're doing everything possible to make sure that our congressional delegation and decision-making people in Washington realize what the impact is going to have to our community, not only to the housing market, real estate market, personal liabilities, sales tax, our small businesses going to be impacted. People are just not going to be able to afford these rates. But, like Earl said, and Julie just said, this is not going to happen overnight. This is going to be like, in some parishes already appealed at a 3 to 5 year process. People should remain concerned. They should continue to do everything they can to help us fight this thing. And, we're going to be doing everything we can. In fact, as you know, Renee and Earl, our whole time has been consumed with these FEMA maps, and it's probably the single most important issue that I've addressed in the 5 years I've been parish president, other than fighting these hurricanes when we first came in. But you know, it's a very serious situation. We're taking it very serious. It's not only St. Charles Parish issue, it's not a state issue, it's a national issue. And but the scary part in talking to some of these congressmen yesterday is that there are 38 states that really believe that grandfathering should not be included in the Biggest Waters Act. And that is the issue. We got to get Biggest Water back into the bill somehow, some kind of way, or we're gonna be in trouble.
Well, thank you all for being on the show. It's a very important topic, and hope our viewers learned a little bit more about the subject.
Thanks.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
Catch the entire episode right here on Channel 6, daily at 5 p.m., or watch anytime at scptoday.com.